Hi everybody, very welcome to the third live stream with Mentor. I will not be able to do this for long tonight because actually it's getting quite late. But I thought I have a good internet connection. Why not try to do a live stream with my friends out there? So if anyone is in here, feel free to join the chat room, ask questions, and I will do my absolute best to try and well, straighten out your question marks, basically. Dartal, great to see you here as well. It's excellent to see that you're all popping in. So, what should we be talking about tonight, guys? This is all, as always, all up to you. First of all, can you all hear me? Is the audio correct this time? Because I've had problems with the audio before. Right, it looks like it's working here. So, let's see. Can I become a pilot if I am homeschooled? That's a great question. Yes, of course you can. Basically, you can become a pilot even with very, very limited schooling. But what you need to do is you need to make sure that you have some kind of equivalent school leaving certificate, something like that, that you can show the flight schools in order to gain access to them. So sure, you can definitely do that. More questions. How is it for a non-EU person to get a job in Europe? Well, this is also a great question. Basically, for you to be able to work within the European Union, you need a couple of things. You need most likely an EASA license that you can get even if you have done your training in, for example, America or in Australia or anywhere else. You can come to Europe and you can convert your license from whatever nationality your license is to an EASA license. But you also need unrestricted right to live and work within the European Union. Now, this is normally where the problem comes in. So, in order for you to know if you are eligible to do that, you are going to need to go to the embassy in your home country, and you're going to have to ask these questions because every country is different. So, go to your embassy, talk to them, see if there's any visa requirements, what kind of paperwork you need to fill in. And once you have that sorted, you should be able to start applying for jobs within the European Union as well. So Ryan is asking, does it make sense to get a 737 type rating or a Airbus A320 type rating? I've done a couple of videos on this, guys. When it comes to type ratings, I normally urge people to be a little bit careful. There's a couple of different scenarios basically. So if you have a job lined up behind the type rating, then by all means get the type rating and start working. If you are taking the type rating to make your chances better to get a job, then you need to be a little bit careful because most airlines will not take you in unless you have both the type rating and also a little bit of experience on type, which is about 500 hours in most cases. Now that is very, very hard to get if you only get the type rating and the touch and goes. So make sure that you have some kind of plan with what you're going to do with the type rating. Otherwise, it's better to apply to an airline that requires you to buy the type rating because at least you have some kind of job lined up after. So that's what I would say when it comes to type ratings. So that's just my 2 cents worth of knowledge on that. Clear Max is asking, can you become a pilot with hair loss? Of course you can become a pilot with hair loss. You should see most of my colleagues, they don't have much hair left. So absolutely. But basically, when it comes to medical conditions, guys, I am not a trained medical professional, which means that I will not be able to answer your medical questions. The best thing I can say is that every city, basically, most part of the world will have a aeronautical medical examiner in that city. Just Google AME, your closest AME, call them and ask your medically related questions directly to them because they will be able to give you a straight and good and valid answer, while what you'll hear from me is just going to be guesses basically. So Nuka, hi, Good to see you. I have heard that the admission test to pilot education is the psychological tests the hardest. Or is that true? Um, yes and no. I mean, if you are going to apply for a good flight school, they should be doing some kind of psychological testing on you, what I call suitability testing. And that will require you to do certain types of psychological exams, like psychometric testing, where they check your personality, for example. It will also include, some easy form of mathematical testings, logical thinking testing, stuff like that. So, yes, it's going to be hard, but basically, while you can, first of all, you can prepare, at least for the mathematical part, you can prepare on. There's loads of websites on internet which gives you good testing and training for this. And then once you're there, you can only do your best. You can only sit down there, try your best, try to solve all the challenges that they put ahead of you. You will not be able to solve all of them. The tests are normally made so that you will not have time to complete all of the exercises, because they want to see how you react to being under that type of stress as well. So the only thing I can say is try your best to prepare yourself before the tests. Make sure that you are well rested before you go for the test. And once you're there, you can only do your best. More questions. Have you ever flown with a CTC student? Yes, I have. Actually, I flew with a CTC student about 2 weeks ago. We were talking at great length about CTC, which seems to be a very good school. Now, I don't have any personal experience from CTC, but everything that I hear from that organization points at it being a very competent, albeit very expensive training organization. He was very good. Phoenix East Aviation from Troll. I am not sure. Actually, I've heard the name Phoenix East Aviation before, but I don't have any personal knowledge about that school, so I can't really help you with that. Bordolo Reyes is asking, is there any height limit for being an ATPL pilot? And yes, I would say like this, it varies a little bit between different airlines, okay? I have heard height limits from about 155 centimeters up to about 200 centimeters. I wouldn't say that those limits are set in stone, but they are set there because of the design of the cockpits, really. Now, if you're shorter than 150 or 160 centimeters, it's going to be very hard for you to be able to both reach the rudder pedals and see above the dashboard correctly, no matter how far forward we move the cockpit chair. So that would be the shorter limitation. That's actually a physical limitation. When it comes to the upper part, it's similar. So you must be able to sit in a good way in the cockpit without hitting your head in the overhead panel, and still being able to reach everything and so on. So there are some physical limitations to it. However, I do not think that they are really set in stone, because it seemed to be different between different airlines and so on. I wouldn't worry too much. Elias DMG, can you answer Darta's question? I didn't see that one, please. So we'll see if I can scroll up here and see which one you're referring to. Dartal. Does Ryanair fund type ratings for students out of CIE CTC, or is it funded by the student? Well, as far as I know, Ryanair is not paying for type ratings for anyone. However, these things change over time. So I do not think that at the moment Ryanair is paying any type ratings. However, that might be on a case-to-case basis as well. And I know that things are changing in the industry at the moment, because everyone needs to get pilots. So even if they're not maybe sponsoring things now, they might well sponsor things in the future. I don't have any insight into that, unfortunately. So, more questions. Alex, I have a Swedish and American citizenship. Do you think I should do my training here, in Scandinavia, or in the States in a local flight school? Well, once again, when it comes to choosing your flight school, guys, that's going to be largely up to you. If you have both a dual, like if you have a dual citizenship and you have the possibility to work in the States, then you might go over there, get your licenses there if it's cheaper. There are a lot of great flight schools in the States, and you can try there. But most likely, it's going to be easy for you to find jobs in Europe, actually, because of the 1,500 hours requirements that the FAA has put in force on flying commercially, well, flying airlines in the United States. So I would, if I were you, I would find a good flight school, try to keep the costs down, and if that happens to be in the States, go there. You can always convert the licenses to EASA when you're coming back. Otherwise, there are some very good flight schools in Scandinavia as well. And what else here? Let's see. What sunglasses do you have? Well, I have a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses, not because of any other reason than I think I like the frame of them. I've had special glasses made because I wear glasses, so I have to have special glasses made. More. Do you need physics to become a pilot? You would not believe how many times I've had that question, and I'm going to tell you now, like I've done in some of my videos online as well, that there are basically two. Well, you need to have good grades in your school, first of all, and when it comes to what specific subjects to choose, I would go for mathematics and physics, not because that you necessarily need them, the grades of them, but because you need to understand physics and mathematics in order to comprehend the Atpl theory when you read it. So if you've read physics, it will make much more sense to you when it comes to aerodynamics, when it comes to meteorology, navigation, things like that. And there is quite a bit of math in it, but it's no advanced math involved. So if you have done those subjects and you have an overall knowledge of these subjects, the Atpl theory will be easier to understand, and that's why. Right, Peter Fly, do you have any further plans to develop your amazing app? And yes, I do. Actually, I am in the planning stage right now to do something you are going to like. I'm fairly sure. I'm not going to tell you what it is, and it's not going to be the current app. The current app is set the way it is. It's a fairly simple app. Even if it's great, it's very simple in its construction. So there will be a new app coming out, guys, and I bet that you are going to love it. However, I would definitely, if you haven't already, I would definitely go in and check out my current app, download it, because you will get a sense of what is to come. So if you haven't already checked out my app, then go into www.mentor360.com. You can download, you can find links to my app there. You can go to any of the app stores. And also you can find the briefing videos, because the whole point with that app is to kind of simulate an ATPL training session or a type rating training session, where you would listen to the briefing first, then you go in and you will watch how the maneuvers are actually flown inside of the aircraft. So watch the briefing videos, get the app, watch the videos, and you will have a much better understanding on how it's done in real life. That's the whole point of that app. But there are more things to come, so stay tuned when it comes to this. More things, let's see. SETI 1997, do pilots ever take work home, like paperwork? And this is one of the great things with being a pilot. No, you do not. You do not take anything home with you, unless you are, like me, an instructor and a manager. Because if you're a pilot, it kind of goes by itself. Once you get to the crew room, you will sign in, you will do your paperwork, where you will be preparing for today's flights and making sure that the weather is okay, that the fuel is okay, that your crew is okay. You will get it out to the aircraft, you will fly that aircraft, and once you get home after the day, you will sign out, fill in the paperwork, and that's it. You can go home, you can leave the job completely behind you, and you do not need to go around and think about it until it's time for your next flight. Well, the day before I start looking at weather and stuff, but that's just me. It's one of the great things of being a pilot. And more questions. How often do you get breaks as an airline pilot? Well, that depends on what you mean by a break. During the day, we don't get breaks. We work, as in you set the aircraft up, you fly. Once you're up en route, of course, there's going to be long times where there's not much to do, where you can drink a coffee, watch your view, talk to your colleagues and so on. But you are constantly working. You're monitoring the ATC frequency. You are making sure the autopilot is doing his job. You're updating the flight plan depending on what kind of direct routings you get. Then you go into your descent, your approach, you land. The turnaround is really busy, so you don't have any time for break there, and then you fly back again. So on a 12-hour day, you will be working continuously for 12 hours, but there will be times to kind of relax during the flight. So I hope that answers your question. Jonas Parves, hey, I want to fly for fun. What do you suggest? I suggest that you go out and get yourself a private pilot license, a PPL, because it's great fun. There's loads of good flying clubs out there. Make sure you find one that has a good quality aircraft. Go and take a test lesson first, see if you like it, and then you can get your PPL and you can take your friends and your family up, and it's a blast to fly around your hometown, go for small little trips and things like that. So I definitely recommend that. Hey, Faizan, hey, good to see you, man. It's nice to have you here. Sin was saying something here that just disappeared. Why did that just disappear? Anyway, Sin, if you had a question, please repeat it because it just disappeared from my view. What has been your hardest landing? Well, the hardest landing that I have recorded was 2.36 G, which is a very hard landing. It was during a training session I did. I wasn't landing, but I wasn't quick enough to save the landing, so it became quite hard. And when those things happen, then you have to call an engineer, and the engineer has to come and they have to check that the aircraft isn't fine and everything. That's why I knew exactly what the amount of G's were. Do you follow the Red Bull Air race? Unfortunately not, actually. I've seen a few races. It's absolutely crazy. I'd love to see it live, but I'm not following the circuit. Now there's a lot of questions coming up here, guys, so I don't really have time to answer all of them. Let's see, I'll go back a little bit here. Christopher Viktorsson, what is your opinion on the Swedish pilot school SAA, and do you know anything about the school's reputation amongst airline companies? Well, I did my training on SAA, so SAA is one of those few schools that I can actually say something about, and all I can say is that I had a very positive experience of them. I think that they are quite well regarded. They're not huge like for example CTC or Oxford Aviation Academy among the airlines. However, I do believe that the quality of the training that they're giving and the quality of the cadets that's coming out there is very good. So so I wouldn't be too worried about joining up with them if the price is correct. More questions, guys, because this is great. I love interacting with you like this, guys. Andrei Lapusan, how can you progress from captain to base manager and instructor as you are? Well, first of all, I'm not a base manager. I am a training manager. The way to go forward in a company is always going to go down the same route. In some companies, you can only go forward once you've been long enough in a company, so you have the seniority to do so. In my company, they're very, very into how good you are at what you do and how much you work and how much you're willing to do. So take initiative, make sure that you know what you're doing, do well in simulator, the current simulator training and things like that, and just show that you're interested and willing to do something. Because to be a good trainer, it's not about money, guys. It is about passion. It's about wanting to teach people. If you don't want that, and if you don't show that you want that, you will not become a good instructor. That's just the way it is, and that's, I think, in the most airlines you need to kind of show that you're passionate about becoming a trainer in order to be considered at all. Surai Keshvala, are there many cadet jobs at the moment in Europe? And yes, it is actually. It's the best I have seen in my 15 years in the business. There are people starting all over the place. Ryanair is hiring, I think, around 600 cadets per year at the moment, and also direct entry first officers and direct entry captains. The same goes for EasyJet, the same goes for Norwegian short haul, for Norwegian long haul. I think SAS, British Airways, KLM, all of them are hiring at the moment. Maybe not cadets, but they're hiring. And when people are being hired, it means that cadets are needed in the smaller airlines and the feeder airlines and so on. So at the moment, the industry is looking very good indeed. Can you talk about military training? Actually, I can't, because I have no idea about military training. I have done everything, all my part of the training has been in the civilian, so I don't know much about military training, unfortunately. So, Edward Cameron, have you seen the movie Sully yet? No, I haven't. I don't even know if it's released. I don't think that it's out until next week, actually. I'm going to see it whenever I have the opportunity to do so. Um, Ben James, does your company ever let you hand fly the aircraft besides landing when you disconnect the autopilot and the landing out? This is a good question, and this is something that I really want to discuss, because this comes up now and then. I haven't had time to do a podcast on it yet. Probably will, actually. Hand flying. You can see hand flying from two different ways. Okay, hand flying is essential. It's a skill that you need to have in order to fly any aircraft safely. You need to be able to handle it. On the other hand, you're flying around with hundreds of people behind you, and those hundreds of people, they're expecting you to operate the aircraft in the safest possible way. And the truth is that the safest possible way is to handle the aircraft with the autopilot. The reason for that is because you enable yourself and your co-pilot to have maximum alertness, have maximum work capacity to overview the situation. Now, so this becomes a paradox. It means that that you, on one hand, need to hand fly. On the other hand, you need to use the autopilot in order to be as safe as possible. So the answer to your question is yes, it is allowed, but under very strict kind of controlled ways. Means that if you're flying home to your home base, the weather is good, there's no CBs around, there's no VFR traffic around, things like that, then sure, you can, in most cases, disconnect and hand fly the aircraft for training. You cannot, however, take away flight directors or reduce to flying raw data, for example, for training, because that's what we have simulators for. And actually, sorry, I'm just going to take some water here, guys. A lot of talking. Actually, the airline industry has realized that this has become a big problem. So most airlines, and my airline in particular, are spending a lot of effort to let pilots hand fly as much as possible in the simulator, where it's under control forms, where you have an instructor that can give you input and let people actually really handle the aircraft in really poor conditions, like 35 knots of crosswind, things like that. So yes, the airline industry knows that people need to hand fly. We let people hand fly in the aircraft under certain conditions, but most of the heavy handling is going to be practiced in a simulator. So I hope that answers your question. So let's see. I'm going to try to capture some of your comments here before they disappear. Will joining the Air Cadets help me become an airline pilot? I get this question quite a lot as well, guys. And the fact is, probably not, as in you're not going to have a huge plus in your CV for being an Air Cadet. However, on the other side, you will learn a lot from people who are instructors in the Air Cadets about maybe the industry, about how to behave, how to basically you'll get exposed to aircraft and the way to think around aircraft and stuff like that, and that will always be positive. So I would never discourage anyone from joining the Air Cadets, but I don't think that it will help you as such to get an airline job. Munim Jamal, can I join airline with math, English, science grade and with enough hours required? Well, yeah, like when it comes to like I said before in this live stream, you should have good grades. You should have math, science, physics. But on top of that, you just need to do well in your flight school, and you need to go, get the hours required, all of the requirements that any airline is asking for, and then you will have a chance to get into the airline. Let's see, the Vinibds. Hi, greetings. Do you have any experience as a pilot working in general aviation? Yeah, I do actually. Not much, but I did. I did a little bit of fire surveillance when I just got my licenses, which meant that I went out, flew around certain tracks to look for fires and reported them into the local fire department. I also towed gliders, not much, but a little bit. You try to do everything. When it comes to building your hours in the beginning, you do whatever you can in order to not pay for flight hours, and that's what I did, just like everyone else. Kevin Connolly, have you ever had a close call in an aircraft? No, not really. Not, when you think about close calls, you think about like close to an accident. No, I haven't. You should never get yourself into that kind of situation. There's so many. You would not believe how many safeguards there is in this industry. Of course, things can happen anyway because of technical failures and so on. But I've been lucky to fly for an airline that has basically brand new aircraft. So very rarely is there anything that goes wrong with the aircraft. And when there's nothing going wrong with the aircraft, it means that it's going to be down to the pilots and the human factor. And I've been lucky enough to be able to avoid that up until now, at least. Have you had any engine failures? No, I haven't. Basically, I don't even know anyone who's had an engine failure, I think. And let's see here. Donny Markov, do you plan on going to so-called legacy airline? No, I am not. You might ask why, and the answer is that I have a very good life as it is right now. And a legacy airline is not what it used to be. Basically in this business, you never say never. You never know, But I've been working for 15 years. If I would go to a legacy airline now, I would be at the bottom of the seniority pile, which means that it would take me probably a good 15 years to become a captain again, because they don't take direct entry captains generally. And that is just not an option. And I am very, very happy with my current employer, actually. Let's see, more questions. What headset would you recommend for PPL training? A good headset. There's so many out there, guys. Bose makes fantastic headsets. They're also very expensive. What else? What did I use? Oof. No, I mean Bose is the one that I would say. I mean, I know that they do very good headsets, so I can recommend that without being nervous in any way. Bradley Irvine, where would you suggest for pilot training? I'm considering CTC and Ryanair is listed, but when do they tend to open their cadet program at CTC, or do they only do it through through CIE? Yeah, when it comes to these things, you're going to have to follow the guidance that is available through these flight schools, because I don't have any view into this. I know Ryanair is picking cadets from CTC. They're picking cadets from several schools. What the internal workings of that is, how CTC is doing it, when and where, you are going to have to follow whatever guidance that they give, because we don't, as instructors in the airline business, we don't really see the inner workings of recruitment, if you see what I mean. Sorry guys, I'm running out of voice here. Egils, Arise. Let's see, there we go.
Here's a question. Is it a disadvantage to be an introvert in the airline industry versus being an extrovert? Good question, as always. No, it is not. That's my quiz. That's my quick answer. It's depending on what you mean by an introvert, though, because you, as in any job, you're gonna have to go through an interview process, and you're gonna have to be able to speak for yourself and answer questions and look people in the eye when you do so. If you can do that, no problem. You do not need to be a clown. You do not need to be the one that is loudest in the room. Actually, um, there are some airlines that do what's called group exercises, where you be put together in a group and they're looking at you from a group perspective. And there you are expected to participate, but not take over the show. You know, you're supposed to be a team player. So to some extent, you're going to need to have a little bit of social skills, because you are going to be part of a team when you're working. So you cannot be the one that's sitting in a corner and not being, not wanting to interact. But an extrovert, as in very extrovert, no, it's not a requirement. Actually, I think a fair few pilots are actually introverts, depending on where you end up in the scale, basically. I hope that answers your questions. Great to see you on the stream, by the way, Egils. Very good. Lars J, what do I have to get have to do to get a Ryanair contract instead of a Brookfield Aviation contract? Well, now I always try to avoid speaking about specific airlines, guys. I do believe, from what I've heard from my colleagues and people working for Ryanair, that there is an application process. Basically, if you're a contractor, you can apply for a permanent contract. I would speak to my base captain if I were you, and they will be able to give you some kind of guidance on this. And I do believe that they do this on numerous occasions, so check with them. Oi, there's so many questions here, guys. It's lovely to see you interact. Now, Tom 19, are you assumed to stay at your base for a specific time so you can build up your life around it? This is also a brilliant question, actually. The When you get your base, right? When you've done your line training, and this also differs for different companies, guys. But for the company that I work, for example, when you have done your line training and you've gotten your base, hopefully that's a base that you like. You can expect to stay there unless something happens to the base until you get your command, and that will differ. Since if you're working in a really fast expanding airline like I am, then it can take 3.5 to 4 years, between 3 and 4 years, to reach the hours needed to be considered for command upgrade. And once you've done your command upgrade, as you know, it's likely that you're going to be relocated to a base where you're needed as a commander. And then, basically, when you have received your command base, if you're happy with your command base, you will probably never move again unless you want to. So the answer to your question is that yes, you can build up a life, but you have to know that when it's time for upgrade, providing that you want to and are ready to go for the upgrade, you're probably going to have to move again. But that is in 4 years away or so on. Dartal, what's the approximate cost of a 737 type rating? It's around 30,000 euros, I believe. Probably can find it cheaper, but remember that you need to do both the type rating and you need to get the touch and go landings, which I believe is a minimum of 6 in the real aircraft that is included, should be included in that price. Neil McGovern, good to see you, Neil. So we're talking about medical fitness here. I thought it was a question from you where I can fill in on that thread. What Neil is saying is absolutely correct, which means that you don't need to be the Hulk or Superman to be a pilot, but you should stay medically fit, which means that you probably should be exercising. I try to go out running. I try to keep myself as fit as possible because honestly, you'll be sitting down a lot in this job. So it's good to keep yourself physically at least a little bit fit. Otherwise, you will probably have problems with your back and probably with your blood pressure and things down the line. So try to keep yourself physically fit, but no, you do not need to be able to run and swim and bicycle a triathlon. Philip Grupoderov, are there part-time pilot jobs? Yes, there are. Most airlines gives this. My airline does. There you can work half-time, you can work part-time. Especially when you have kids, it has to be very, very common to do part-time work. Neil McGovern. Okay, they're actually asking you some questions, Neil, here. So you feel free to answer them. Works well. Scott Young is asking, have you ever aborted a takeoff in real life? No. I've also been very lucky. I have not aborted the takeoff so far. Touch wood. See, so there we go, Neil. So you're buying a share in a Mooney. That's awesome. Moonies are cool. Any advice for things to look out for? I assume you mean on the aircraft in itself. I am not a technical expert on the Mooney. They're starting to be quite old now, but as far as I know, the Mooney is an absolutely fantastic machine. Everything I've heard about it, it's good. So yeah, as you're probably aware, make sure that you have a licensed engineer with you before you go through with with buying it. More questions, guys. I think I'm going to start wrapping this up. Would you ever start your own school? Probably not, to be honest. Starting a flight school is very hard work, so I don't think that I will. But I am starting my own company. The company is doing virtual reality training material. Hopefully that will catch on. That's what I'm working on to make sure. I mean, hopefully you've all seen my Mentour 360 application by now. If you haven't, you should check it out. That one I am working on possibly using it for CRM training, for cabin crew training, for MCC training, for things like that. So, I wouldn't start my own school, but I might start providing material for schools. Donny Marco, why do you love your job? Simply like that. I love my job for several reasons. I love my job because it gives me a lot of free time with my family. I love my job because I get to see the sun every day. I get to power up a Boeing 737 down the runway at almost 250, 300 kilometers per hour. I get to land the beast in tailwinds, in crosswinds, in headwinds, and it's simply a very good job. It's a job, so it's not like I am running around on pink clouds every day, because it's still a job. I still get tired when I have to get up in the morning. I still do not want to go to work some days because I want to stay home. But as far as jobs goes, very few job beats this. So, questions about my Mentour Cadets program. I have actually found about 8 people who are currently making videos, and we are producing for the Mentour Cadets project. I will be releasing some of them soon. We'll be looking at the quality of what's coming in. But when I start this, and this is really important, guys, when I start this, I want you to hand in all the questions you might have, right? When these students are releasing their first videos, I want you to be in that comment field and ask every single question that you have to these guys. Because depending on what you guys ask, I will then be able to tell them that now next session we are going to do this. All right, we're going to talk about admission exams, so we're going to talk about navigation, and we're going to talk about how it felt to do your first flight. So depending on what you guys want, these students will try to answer that for you. So this will be the first kind of interactive YouTube channel. It's a kind of interactive YouTube channel that just does not exist yet. So I'm really excited about this, and it's all up to you guys to make it happen. Um, my views on MPL programs. I got a question about that. I've actually done a video about MPL programs, so check that out actually, because it's getting a little bit. It'll be too long for me to explain it. Do pilots become competitive with each other? Generally not. No, no. You never compare in that way. You know, you try to do good landings. You try to taxi well. You try to do good things as good as you possibly can. But since you, the captain, will be working with the first officer and so on, there's never really any competition going on between the pilots in the cockpit. It would be very weird. And since we don't get to see the others, you know, there's never any competition going that way either. So it's very rare to have competition in the cockpit. Do you as a pilot have different meals provided aside from the basic sandwiches offered by passengers? Well, in my airline, we have to bring our own food, believe it or not. That was a choice made by the pilots a long time ago because they did not want the standard airline sandwiches. So instead of eating that, they got a bit of a pay bump, and we started bringing our own food, which is actually great. If you're working for a short haul operator and you get to bring your own salad instead of eating those sandwiches, it's a good thing. Kevin Connolly, is flight safety well known? I don't really. You'll have to rephrase that question, because as far as I know, flight safety is very well known. That's all I can say about that at the moment. So, Oliver Gates, do you ever have to write down the longer ATC instructions? Yeah, I mean, I would, depending on how you see it. In the air, no. In the air, you read it back, or you read back as much as you can, and then you ask them to repeat, because very rarely you get a very long IFR clearance once you're airborne. On the ground, we do write it down because it's a legal requirement to save it on the flight plan. When we're taxiing, we put it into the FMC scratch pad, the taxi clearances, so that we can both verify it and we can remember it as we're taxiing down. But as always, when it comes to IFR clearances and any kind of ATC communication, you can always cross-check it. You can always ask, you can re-ask. You know, they are there to help us. We are there to work together to make the job done. So if they give you a 20 sentence long clearance, they should understand that you will not be able to take it down. So that's the way it works. More questions here. Do airlines value university degrees? That's also probably in my top 3 list of most asked questions here on the channel. Yeah, some airlines will require you to have a university degree. Okay, some airlines have that as a way of kind of reducing the pile of applicants. So they've said, right, we want people to have a university degree. That way the pile shrinks from this size to this size, and it's easy to find. There's no requirements to have a university degree to be a pilot. I do not have a university degree, for example. So some airlines do have it as a requirement, some airlines do not have it as a requirement. It's depending on how much they need pilots. So even the airlines that require you to have a university degree might skip that if they would suddenly need a lot of pilots. But yeah, I always tell people, if you have a choice and you have the possibility to take a university degree, then please do so, because you have something to fall back on. If something happens either to your medical health, or you find out that this job is not for you, or something else happens, you will have something to fall back on, because the pilot training is pilot training, and it is not good for much more than being a pilot, you know. So, does a pilot flying a 737 make as much as a pilot flying the Airbus 380? When it comes to salaries, this is also something that I get asked a lot. And of course, it's a really, really interesting question. I'm just going to change position here a little bit. Salaries work like this. It's different between every country. It's different between every part of the world. It's different between every airline. So, but if you want a kind of a small explanation to what you have, is that generally speaking, the commuters, the ones that fly the smaller aircraft, the turboprops and so on, tend to be a little bit less paid than the pilots flying, for example, the 737 or the Airbus 320 on short to medium haul in jets. Okay, then you tend to get a little bit better paid if you go up to fly the wide bodies, to fly the intercontinental routes. But there you might have it so that some very good short to medium haul companies might pay a little bit better than a worse paying um, wide body airline. So, you know, when you start to get up to the sizes of 737 up to Airbus 380, it's going to be differences, but it might not be as big of a difference as it will be when you go from commuter airline up to those type of airlines. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's a bit blurry, but that's the best I can do, basically. I think that I, for example, probably earn as much as some of the Airbus 380 captains. I probably earn less than most of them. Stuff like that. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. What's been the hardest runway to land at? Generally, it tends to be airports that have complex approaches into them. So I know, for example, an airport that I personally do not like very much to go into is Toulon in France. The reason for that is because they have cross runways with a lot of civilian air traffic, a lot of helicopters, and to at least one of the runways you have to do a fairly complicated circling maneuver to get down on the runway. So when you have to do that together with VFR traffic, together with air traffic controllers that do not speak perfect English, it becomes very, very complicated very quickly. Have you ever flown to Leeds Bradford International? I have. It's a lovely little airport, but when we're talking about complicated airport to fly to, Leeds is fairly complicated as well because of the short runway. Any advice on doing your first solo? Yes, I do. Enjoy. Really, you know, you're only going to do your first solo once. It's a fantastic experience. Once you have gotten yourself airborne and you're flying, if it is to do a touch and go landing when you're on the downwind, just take a deep breath, look around you, and realize that you're sitting in an aircraft by yourself, right? Just enjoy the feeling. Just do that. That's what I would advise you to do. More questions. Let's see. Have you ever flown to Turkey? No, I haven't flown to Turkey. We're not flying to Turkey at the moment. It might happen in the future. Are ATC communications hard to get a hang on? Yeah, it's one of those things that people struggle with quite a lot in the beginning. Mostly because ATC instruction differ a little bit, especially when it comes to dialects and stuff. So you might be very good at doing your ATC calls in England, for example, but then when you fly to Spain or to Italy or to France, the dialect is so different that it takes you a while to get your head around it. So ATC, when it comes to becoming good at ATC, it's just exposure. You need to fly and to speak a lot on the radio. The more you do it, the easier it will become. Have you ever flown to Spain? From Santiago Lorenzo. I live in Spain. I am based in Girona, in north of Barcelona. So yeah, I fly to Spain every single day. Ahmed, are you pilots allowed to listen to music in the cockpit? No, we're not. And the simple and simple explanation to that is because we're supposed to be monitoring the radio, and it's very hard to do. If you're listening to music, even if it's a very low volume, it's still going to be destructive enough for you to miss some radio calls, and that is not good. Have you ever flown to Scotland? Yeah, I've flown to Prestwick, I've flown to Glasgow, I've flown to Edinburgh. I've flown quite a lot to Scotland actually. So Winglet 757, regarding the long-term development, are there possibilities related with engineering for pilots holding an engineering degree? Yeah, actually it is. You can become a technical pilot. If you have those kind of qualifications, it will always be good. You just have to look out for when they're asking for a technical pilot, for example, and you might well be considered with it if you have those kind of degrees or experiences since before. Which is your dream plane that you would love to be a pilot on? Well, I would love to try different types of airplanes. I would love to try, for example, flying the Airbus because it's a completely different philosophy. I would really like to fly the 787, the Dreamliner, because I would like to learn new things. It's a great thing to do. However, I when you have been a while in the business, what type of aircraft you're flying is less important than what kind of life you have. And I have a very good life, which means that I will not change my life quality in order to fly a different aircraft. Because you know what? When you're sitting there, no matter if you're flying an Airbus 380 or a Boeing 737, it's about the same distance to the nose. It's what you see is going to be very similar. Joshua Drabble is asking, when will you be in the UK next and a chance to meet up? Yeah, I'll be in the UK in the end of September. When it comes to meeting up, sure, we can see if we can arrange some kind of hangout or whatever. Stansted Airport, maybe something like that. I would love to meet some of you guys. So we'll see what we can do. Who teaches to fly the aircraft, the airline or the flight school when it comes to big aircraft? It differs a little bit. Most of the time it's the airline. So most of the time you will do your type rating with the airline, or the airline might have contracted out the type rating to a flight training organization. So for example, CAE might be doing the training on the 787 for, I'm just taking Norwegian as an example. So most of the time it's the airline. Some of the time the airline will contract it out to a training organization somewhere else. Or someone like me, who's a type rating examiner and instructor, might do it for you. More questions here. Who inspired you to fly? It was my dad. He wasn't a pilot as a commercial pilot, but he was a private pilot. He was the one that brought me out with the Piper PA-28. I flew with him. I helped him with navigation. I flew all over northern Sweden with him, and he was also the one, together with my mom, who gave me as my present for my 14th birthday to do a test lesson, and that's really what sold me. So he's my inspiration to becoming a pilot. Justin Linko, have you ever had problems with ground school? No, I actually have been lucky. I have been quite okay with that, but that's because I've been studying my ass off. It's not because I think it's particularly easy. I know it's really hard work. There's no way around it. You're just going to have to study, talk to people, study even more. So I haven't had problems with it, but I have been working very hard to get good exam results. Are you a captain or a first officer? I am a captain. I am a training captain. I am a type rating instructor and a type rating examiner. Furious Baltics. Like I was mentioning this in the beginning of the live stream here. I'm not really comfortable with talking about medical conditions. I am not a trained medical examiner, so I cannot talk about things like epilepsy, for example. The best thing I can tell you is to contact an aeronautical examiner, medical examiner, an AME, and they will give you a very straight answer to your question. Have you ever had to divert to another airport, either as an airline pilot or in training? Yeah, I did that about a month ago, actually. And if you go into my homepage, www.mentor360.com, I have a blog that I recommend all of you guys to watch. If you haven't already, you can follow me there. I go now and then, I go in and I talk a little bit about my daily life, not only like the type, not like the video podcast I'm doing, more like short stories. So go into mentor360.com and look in the blog. It's going to be at the bottom of the first page you come into. And in there, for example, I talked about a diversion I did from Girona to Barcelona last month and what to think about things like that. I've also done a podcast on the subject. Bo, 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 bo. I have a Twitter, Ruben. Look me up, Mentour Pilot. It's I am on Twitter. So, Mike, hi Mentor. What do you have to do in order to become a TRE? Yeah, in most cases you have to become a training captain first. So do line training, and if you do that and you've done that for a while and you apply and there's a TRE opportunity coming up in your airline and you apply to it, you might have to do some interviews and some testing. And once you are you've cleared that and you've been selected, you will be first trained to become a type rating instructor, and then you will have to do some instructing, and then you will do some extra training and become an examiner. Have you ever flown to the Greek island Crete? I have actually, but it was a long time ago now. I haven't flown there recently. Mohammed M. Hi Mentor, how do you feel about waking up early in the morning as a pilot? I'm sure the views is worth making or makes up for it. Yeah, but really, when you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're not happy. That's just the honest answer to that. I never get used to getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And sure, once you're up there and you're taking, you're climbing up into the sunrise, it's beautiful, and right then you start to become in a good mood again. But up until then, it's fairly miserable to get up in the morning, at least for me. That's the honest answer I can give you. Have you ever flown to Ireland West Knock? Yeah, I have several times. It's lovely, it's beautiful up there. One of the first pictures on Instagram I have from there actually. Hey, from Dublin Aviation. Hi, Peter. Have you heard the argument from BA pilots in Dublin ATC? I have, and it's a disgrace. First of all, we do not argue with ATC. You just don't do that. Especially, I know which incident you're talking about, and it was a very, very busy day in Dublin, and the poor ATC girl who was handling it was doing a fantastic job actually, and then they came in and they were honestly quite rude to her. I, no, you have to treat each other with respect in this job. When it comes to talking to ATC, when it comes to ground handlers, when it comes to dispatchers, when it comes to cabin crew, we're all a team who's trying to do everything in the best possible way. You do not treat people with disrespect, because it will just make the system collapse. Not good. Kristoffer Viktorsson in Swedish. Let's see here. Finns det en möjlighet att få en plats i cockpit under en av dina flygningar? I'll translate it for the rest of you if there's any way to get into the cockpit. And the sad answer to that is no. In my airline, it's completely impossible. You need to be a uniformed pilot with an ID from my airline in order to get access to the cockpit. Otherwise, it's only check airmen from the aviation authorities that are allowed. There are some airlines, especially some smaller commuter airlines and so on, that you might still do it. And some parts of the world, you might still get access to the cockpit. But in most cases, after 9/11, it's completely sealed off. So the closest thing you will get, unfortunately, is my virtual reality application, Mentour 360. So have a look at that. Are you ever scared when you fly from Beastly Beast? No, not scared. I did a podcast on this quite recently. Check that out, actually. We tend not to get nervous or scared that way. You might get more tensed, you might get more concentrated, but scared, no, not very, very rarely. I would, no, not scared like that. Even if something bad happens, even if you get an engine failure and so on, what happens is that you focus and you work harder to make sure that you sort the problem. I would say you probably get scared afterwards. If something really bad has happened, you probably, once you get down, you would start to shiver. But at that time, the training should be kicking in, and you should be focusing completely on solving whatever it is that scared you. Have you ever got stricken by a thunderbolt? I have had lightning strikes. Yes, it's not actually that uncommon. It happens now and then. An aircraft is a perfect Faraday's cage, so most of the time you will just see the flash, hear the bang, and you will not notice anything, except that when you get down and you have an engineer check the aircraft out, they will find teeny tiny little holes, as in like needle sticks, around where the lightning went into the aircraft and where it came out again. And there needs to be some engineering checks after that, obviously. Faisan, you will have the last question of the day. What happens if a pilot fails their simulator test? When it is a recurrent training, then what happens is that the pilot cannot fly, as in they're not, if you fail a simulator test, you will not be able to fly online until you have been successful in your test. So what happens is that the pilot gets taken offline and gets immediately scheduled to do some extra training with a type rating instructor or a synthetic flight instructor to practice whatever it was that they failed. When they're happy with that, they will be going for a subsequent retest, either or only on the exercise that was failed, or if it was a lot of things, they might have to redo the whole simulator test. And then once they have cleared that, then they're just back onto line, and that's it. That's it. We make sure that the people get the training they need in order to be safe online, and that's it. So guys, I've been doing this for an hour now. I really hope you like it. I love the way that you've been interacting. Continue to do this, and I will continue to do these live streams at least once a month, I'm hoping for. So until next time, make sure that you check out my app, because now I am trying to get in as much users as possible for the next coming applications, so that those of you who love my app, and all of the ones who have been buying the app so far, have been absolutely happy with it. It's 5 stars all over the app stores in all parts of the world, which makes me think that it's probably a good idea to do more of them, don't you think? And that's what I'm looking at right now. So if you haven't already, go in. I know it costs a little bit of money, because I need that in order to go on and continue to create even greater things. But it's absolutely worth the equivalent of a cup of coffee. And with those words, I thank you for staying up with me this late. I'm gonna go to bed now, because it's actually almost 1 o'clock in the morning here. Take care, everyone out there. Really love your support, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.